This is a real mess
so
because we have a severe thunderstorm warning over top of a flash flood warning with a tornado warning on top of that in the same area. We told you today was going to be a crazy weather day. This is what we're talking about. Multiple dangerous and potentially life-threatening threats at play right now at 5:28 on this Wednesday evening. The amount of rain that's falling out of these storms is 2, 3, maybe even 3.5 inches of rain in an hour. To give you an idea, in our suburbs, it takes 1 inch of rain in 3 hours to cause flooding.
And Brittany, I can tell you that the residents out here were listening, they were watching, they were in their basements. The power of Mother Nature and the tornado that ripped through here appears to have come right through this path, but this is the worst. This is the worst destruction that I've ever seen from storm damage and tornadoes in South Jersey.
Take a look at this. It's picking up here again, too. We're talking about heavy rain. Even a little earlier, it was car wash rain. It was like as heavy as if you were taking your car through a car wash where you really did need to stop and pull over, maybe go into a Wawa and get under the cover, where the gas pumps are and stuff, because it is that dangerous. I'm sitting here looking at this guy like you're looking at this person, and I think you're thinking the same thing I'm thinking, Jim, and everybody watching
don't
home.
Go through that.
Don't do it. Please don't go through it.
Take a look. That was the Manayunk sign. I'm sorry, that just collapsed into this river that's on Main Street. I wish we had just showed you what it looked like before. It says, "Welcome to Manayunk." And yeah, welcome to Manayunk this morning.
We're seeing a ramp up of these boat crews, these rescue crews from Montgomery County. There have been 2 out here for about an hour, going door to door, handing life vests into mainly second-story windows because the first floors of these homes are inaccessible and are flatly dangerous. You can see the depth of the water based on a hood of a car is all that is poking above the surface.
I moved locations from the last time. This is the 676. Yeah, we're on the on-ramp here to the 676 on the Vine here, but this is the on-ramp, so it's across the street from where I was right now. And look at this right here. It just, again, it takes your breath away when you look at these images and how high the water is.
The same police department that helped send an innocent man to death row nearly 30 years ago is now reinvestigating the work of its own office.
The Barbara Jean Horn murder case was reopened after the NBC10 investigators reporting for the true crime series Who Killed Barbara Jean. Now, investigative reporter Claudia Vargas sits down with Philly police homicide detectives and the district attorney about the latest twist in the case.
Walter Ogrod is a free man. He was exonerated last year after the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office determined that he did not kill 4-year-old Barbara Jean Horn in 1988. This led the NBC10 investigators to question, if he didn't kill Barbara Jean, then who did? In our true crime series, Who Killed Barbara Jean, we retrace the investigation from start to present. And during one of the interviews for the series, the head of the District Attorney's Conviction Integrity Unit, Patricia Cummings, says that they identified 2 new persons of interest.
We've been able to identify a couple of suspects that we think that there is more evidence suggesting they did it than Walter Ogrod ever.
Philly Police Homicide Captain Jason Smith says that clip triggered his office to reopen the case.
Prior to that, I did not have knowledge that there were additional suspects that had been developed.
He assigned 2 investigators to the Barbara Jean Horn murder, even paying them overtime to watch our 11-part series.
I felt that it was incumbent upon our unit to reopen that investigation.
But the DA's office had no idea the PPD had reopened the investigation until we asked them about it.
We found out from you. You're the first one to tell us that the police department had reopened an investigation. We're happy to hear they did.
They have since started sharing information on the case, and DA Larry Krasner says there's more to come.
We are prepared to share information with them. It has not all been shared yet, but we're looking forward to doing that.
The previous lack of communication between the 2 agencies is frustrating for Barbara Jean's family.
It's kind of ridiculous that the two departments of law enforcement in the city of Philadelphia can't get along with one another. Don't trust one another, whatever it may be.
Both agencies say they want justice for Barbara Jean and are willing to cooperate with one another on the case. It is the first investigation into a Philly murder case that was previously solved but the convicted killer was exonerated.
What's the significance of that?
It's good news. You know, it's how it should always be. There should be a willingness on the part of all agencies to look back on mistakes, or even worse than mistakes, really terrible things that have happened in the past.
Krasner's office believes that Walter Ograd was coerced by now retired Philly detectives into giving a false confession. An attorney for those former detectives says his clients have no comment for this story. They have asked a judge to dismiss a federal civil rights lawsuit Walter Ograd brought against them. But Smith says that doesn't stop his unit from taking a fresh and objective look at the case.
We're not going to be bitter about that, because that doesn't serve any purpose.
And so far, Smith and his team don't think there was enough evidence pointing to Ograd.
Our initial indication would be that there probably wasn't enough. If you take that statement out of the mix, okay?
The statement being Ograd's signed confession.
How that statement was taken via freehand. So I had the opportunity to review that statement, and I had my own issues with it.
What were your issues with it?
I'd rather not specify that.
He says some of the witness statements were also inconsistent.
We wouldn't have been comfortable sending that over to the DA's office for charging at that point in time.
Barbara Jean's stepdad still has a hard time believing that the person previous detectives worked so hard to put behind bars is not the killer.
Like we're talking that everybody's just cold-blooded here. Everybody involved in the police department, everybody involved in the DA's office, prior to Larry Krasner, were cold-blooded.
But he is glad that if his stepdaughter's murder is now considered unsolved, that police are reinvestigating.
What do you hope comes out of this now that police are reinvestigating it?
That whoever did it gets punished. That's it. That's all there is. There is nothing else.
For the investigators, Claudia Vargas, NBC 10 News.
And you can see how this all began. Our true crime series, Who Killed Barbara Jean, is streaming through the NBC 10 app on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV devices. You can also watch at NBC10.com/Who Killed Barbara Jean. Right now at 4:30, the NBC 10 investigators get action. For more than 5 years, they've put a spotlight on Philadelphia's hit-and-run crashes, and now the city is taking action. Those crashes have caused millions of dollars in property damage and devastated families.
And today, Philadelphia City Council began hearings based on our reporting. For what may change, we go to NBC 10 investigative reporter Mitch Blocker. He's live in Winfield. And Mitch, you've been talking about these devastating car crashes for years now.
Yeah, and to give you guys some perspective, you got to go back to our reporting in 2017, 2018. That is when we tracked all the hit and runs in Philadelphia to 26,000 different locations. Then in 2019, we found 9 people died from hit and run accidents in Philly. In 2020, that went all the way up to 28 deaths from these hit and run accidents. Well, all this reporting, there's a city councilman who was watching, and today he took action and started hearings.
These are collisions that kill.
He was a son, a father. He was going to get married this year.
One killed Robert Evans in January 2020.
He was just a great, kind individual.
Another killed Will Lindsay last July.
A car came by and hit him and continued on.
Robert and Will are 2 of the 28 people killed by a hit-and-run driver last year in Philadelphia.
My worst fear came true.
Their mothers still don't know who was behind the wheel.
We're hoping that somehow, some way, that person would come forward just to have some closure for us.
What's so devastating is how common these crimes are and how uncommon it is for police to solve them.
I do remember listening to one of your stories and listening to a father talk about his 4-year-old son who had been killed in a hit-and-run situation. That was specifically in your story.
Wednesday, a year into office, City Councilman Isaiah Thomas began hearings.
It was no secret that you, Mitch, and the entire team over there have been on top of this issue for a significant amount of time.
The chair of the Streets and Services Committee is especially alarmed by hit-and-run deaths doubling in 2020, in a year most of us spent home.
We know that we've seen more deaths in 2020 than what we've seen in over a decade.
Now, he says, is the time to talk about solutions. The council began by listening, first to police.
The police department's ability to hold drivers accountable is minuscule.
Then academics.
We must
narrow our driving lanes.
And finally, moms like Stephanie Evans.
My son was lying in the streets dead.
Much of what council heard today has been said on our air before. Today, the commanding officer of Philly's Accident Investigation District told council members his unit can only investigate 4% of the tens of thousands of car crashes each year in the city.
Because the consequences are nil.
It's almost identical to what he told us 2 years ago.
There's not much in the way of consequences, and the person has a pretty good chance of getting away with it.
We've talked to our state lawmakers about stiffer penalties.
That's my only child.
Along the way, we've met too many grieving families.
I don't need no other family being heartbroken.
They warned us years ago about the consequences of inaction.
Why is this time going to be different?
Well, Mitch, I'm going to be honest. I can't promise you it's going to be different. I could just promise you that it's a different person that's facilitating the conversation. And I can tell you and assure you that my goal is to see some direct action.
How safe are you from cyber criminals? We know phishing schemes and ransomware, they're virtually infecting companies small and large, but the physical threat to your data may be greater than you think.
New reports from the Identity Theft Resource Center says just a few stolen phones or documents have led to hundreds of thousands of data breach victims across the country in 2020. So NBC 10's Danny Freeman spoke to the people working in the shadows to keep your information safe.
On a recent Monday night, just before 9:15, our cameras were rolling as two men plotted a break-in. Burglars hunting for medical records and personal data of thousands of Philadelphians. In less than 4 seconds, they were in. But they're not the bad guys. You break and enter for a living.
That's right.
As cybercriminals target more Americans every day, from mega companies to individual social security numbers, businesses across the country are turning to professionals like Matt Barnett, hired to test both their cyber and physical data security.
How do we know that the doors are locked properly and that the sensors are operating the way they should?
NBC 10 got exclusive access to see exactly how Barnett does it. The target? The Mazzoni Center in Philadelphia, a health and wellness clinic that services tens of thousands of the city's LGBTQ community.
We have their protected health information. We have their demographics, all the key info that comes in. We have to make sure we keep it secure.
The center's Sharin Chaco believes it's secure, but
we don't know the vulnerabilities unless someone breaks in.
So he's paying for a break-in. For days, Barnett and his team surveyed the place, recording the clinic, identifying weak points, preparing for this October night. And with the police aware just in case, Barnett geared up. All the tools you'd expect and some you wouldn't.
You could have the best antiviral software in the world, but if you can get inside the system and put this in, right, then you're in. Exactly.
So just before 9:15, body cameras on, the two were off. We followed along across the street. In an instant, they were in.
We gotta move.
The first bit of good news for the company, the alarm went off as soon as Barnett breached the door.
It's alarm.
But as Sharin watched on the center security cameras, he was stunned.
And I'm like, all right, there's no way they're not gonna go in that door. Okay, they're in that door. No way they're gonna make it to the elevator. They're in the elevator.
Floor by floor, Barnett slipped by locked doors, broke into secure areas, and even got his hands on historic medical records. Thankfully, the security largely held up. The all-important data center went undiscovered.
Sometimes it's the most secure building that you get into the easiest, and sometimes it's the one you expect it to be easy ends up being the real challenge. And I think this case had a great balance, and that's really a win-win for everybody.
For the center security team, the experience was reassuring.
We have to make sure that we're always prepared for something bad, because the truth of the matter is the world is crazy. And people are always looking to get away with something.
The clinic is now reinforcing doors and procedures, and Sharin's convinced other companies should test their systems too.
It's always good to stay ahead of the curve and see what you're facing against, rather than waking up one morning and then you have everything that you've built so far in jeopardy.
Even if it means letting the good guys break in to keep the bad guys out. For the investigators, Danny Freeman, NBC 10 News.
NBC 10 breaking news.
Right now at 5, Cosby conviction overturned. The 83-year-old comedian is out of prison tonight. That's after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court vacated the sentence in his sexual assault case. And just moments ago, live right here on NBC 10, Bill Cosby walked out of his home with his arm raised and smiling earlier. Skyforce 10 over his home in Montgomery County as he got out of this car that brought him home from prison.
The numbers are staggering. Take a look at how many people were riding SEPTA in the city before the pandemic and during. An 88% drop in April compared to the year before. And these are SEPTA's numbers. Now take a look at our survey results. 68% said that they rode SEPTA daily before the pandemic. Now it's less than half that. And 1 in 4 say they stopped riding altogether.
Let's break that down by bringing in a little model of this fire right into our studio here. So there's our tire fire. You can see this overlaid on a map of our region. Now what happened was that fire was burning in southwest Philly, and we started with that black smoke as this fire began. But the winds, they were coming out of the west, shifting to the southwest at around 10 to 15 miles per hour. So once those winds factored in, it actually started to lift that smoke and drag it right overhead, right through parts of South Philly and all the way downwind into New Jersey. This smoke continued to push forward. But as that smoke continued to push forward, the night fell and the winds weakened. As the winds weakened, those calm reports couldn't help guide the smoke anymore.
It's been like this for 4 hours now we're working on, and it seems like it's just going to stay that way for some time, which is why we have these large snow totals that we do have. I mean, it is obviously difficult to drive in. It's difficult to walk in when you're walking in snow that really has not been traversed at any point.
Tonight, Philadelphia is dealing with its own gun violence crisis. Police say a 23-year-old man was shot multiple times on Reinhardt Street in southwest Philadelphia tonight. He died at the hospital. Police haven't made any arrests. And gun violence has already taken the lives of more than 700 people in the city since 2020. But that is just the worst ending of this epidemic.
Thousands more have survived bullets but have been left with permanent injuries, some paralyzed. NBC 10 investigative reporter Claudia Vargas shows us the challenges gun violence survivors face and the impact it has on all of us.
At 22 years old, John Paul has trouble walking, even with a cane.
In 3, 2, 1.
Twice a week, he gets strapped to a treadmill, with 3 therapists helping him walk again. It's all a result of Philadelphia's gun violence. JP, as he prefers to be called, was one of last year's 2,222 shooting victims. It was one of the most violent years on record for the city, and this year is looking even worse, with more than 1,200 shootings so far.
It's like happening every day.
Every day, more people end up like JP. He was shot multiple times last year during what he says was an attempted robbery. One bullet struck his cervical spine.
I couldn't move, like from the neck down. I wasn't able to talk. I couldn't get nothing by mouth.
And this isn't the first time he and his family faced gun violence.
John Paul Jr. shot to death on the first floor. His wife, Sherelle Ryan, was found alive on the second floor, but suffering from multiple gunshot wounds.
In 2012, JP's father was killed in a home invasion.
I was 13, my brother. Yeah, we both witnessed it.
His mom survived, but like JP, had to learn to walk again.
I'm like living like her life again.
JP doesn't have a criminal record. He's a high school graduate who was working while going to school for occupational therapy. And yet, he couldn't escape the city's gun violence on the very block where he lived.
Thankfully for JP, the bullet didn't completely tear his spinal cord. He's slowly been able to regain movement. In December, as seen in this family video, he could barely take a step. Now, he can take several steps on his own and accomplish simple tasks such as opening the refrigerator himself.
But yeah, I could do this now.
JP and other shooting victims learned to walk again at McGee Rehabilitation Hospital. Dr. Guy Freed is the chief medical officer. He says McGee has seen the severity of gunshot wounds get worse in recent years.
We are seeing quite a lot of patients that are spinal cord injured, shot in the neck, shot in the back, and having paralysis or partial paralysis from the gunshot wounds.
Dr. Freed says gun violence is robbing young Philadelphians of the opportunity to work and make Philly a better place.
You're having an otherwise able-bodied, tax-paying 22-year-old become a patient.
And some may never walk again. Charles Horton is trying to get that message across to the city's youth.
A lot of them just don't know that gun violence, one bullet, can do that to you.
Horton was shot in 1988 and paralyzed for the rest of his life.
Sometimes the pins and needles is so bad in my hands that when I touch anything, it's painful. And I've been going through that pain for over 30 years.
But at McGee,
Put some weight on it.
JP's hoping that with the help of therapy, he will fully walk on his own. His mom did.
She was like my biggest inspiration.
For the investigators, I'm Claudia Vargas, NBC 10 News.
That right there is the sound of progress in one local neighborhood. An NBC 10 investigation is helping clean up Camden. About a year ago, someone ditched their boat in this back alley. And when neighbors couldn't stand the eyesore and what it was attracting, they got in touch with NBC 10.
Investigative reporter Mitch Blocker got results in just days.
Jessica Galarza lives miles from the water, but this abandoned boat spent 1 year sitting behind her house in Camden.
I see rats, I see a lot of different animals, and I know it's because of this.
The boat's trailer tires are flat. The yard and road around the boat are becoming a dumping ground for spares. Inside the cabin is like a dumpster, full of boxes, boards, and trash. Jessica told us the boat showed up after she bought her house. Her family moved to Camden from Puerto Rico when Hurricane Maria destroyed their home.
You fled this hurricane.
This is another hurricane, yes.
The mayor's office confirms Jessica has been calling Camden Public Works and City Hall for months, trying to get the boat cleaned up.
We're going to call the mayor's office and we're going to try to get somebody to come out here and remove this.
I appreciate it.
I know it would mean a lot to the people in this neighborhood to get this cleaned up.
Just days later, the Camden Public Works Department did more than just get rid of that boat. They made quick work of the trash and the tires. They cut the weeds and swept up the vacant lot. Then their bulldozer got to work on the boat, first pulling the trailer out from under it, then crushing it into small enough pieces to scoop up and drive to the end of the block to a massive dumpster truck.
We're working feverishly around our community to continue to improve the quality of life.
Camden's interim mayor showed up to watch the cleanup. Victor Karstarfin was a city councilman when Jessica's calls about the boat first came in. He says the boat was on Public Works' to-do list, but our call sped things up.
You're out here, and the community starts to see you, and they say, all right, you know, there's some action taking place, and you're a conduit. You become sometimes you're bridging a gap.
It took this Camden Public Works crew less than an hour to clean up this mess.
Well, I appreciate you cleaning this up.
Appreciate you, Mitch. Thank you.
It won't be bothering Jessica Galarza anymore.
I'm so happy. I'm really happy. Thank you so much.
In Camden, for the investigators, I'm Mitch Blocker, NBC 10 News.
And NBC 10 can help you. If you have an issue in your neighborhood or community, reach out to us by filling out a form at NBC10.com/investigators.
NBC 10 Responds viewers have reached out to us about recent problems with the post office. But one woman's story is especially heartbreaking. She says the post office lost something precious that she'd never be able to replace. So she wrote to us for help.
You know, it was enough to lose Mom, but not to have her ashes, Tracy. That's a hard pill to swallow.
Joanne DiGaetano has been on a quest for those ashes for weeks. Her mother, Ruth, died of COVID at a nursing home in New Jersey in December.
Her remains were shipped on December 28th overnight, and I should have had her on December 29th.
The package was shipped through the U.S. Postal Service overnight from Woodbridge to be delivered to Joanne in Bensalem. Joanne had hoped to have her mom in a special urn she purchased to mark what would have been her mom's 90th birthday in mid-January. That didn't happen.
Just all of a sudden I went, okay, something's not right. I should have had her long by now.
She says she called various post offices in North Jersey, and the funeral director emailed the post office complaints department, but no one could locate the remains. USPS website only shows the package in transit. Frustrated, Joanne reached out to NBC 10 Responds for help.
I can't even imagine the level of frustration that you have right now.
And the pain and heartache.
We contacted the post office and asked what was being done to locate the package. It told us in part, we regret that the package has not yet been located, but we will continue our vigilance to resolve the matter. According to Joanne, someone from the post office then called her for the first time.
At one point, what she said to me was, it appears your mother's package has gone into a black hole. And boy, did I lose it, Tracy.
We continued to reach out to the post office, asking how this could happen and what was being done to find the remains. The post office did not explain what went wrong. But then, 2 weeks after NBC 10 Responds got involved, Joanne welcomed Mom home. The post office told us, we were very pleased that we were able to deliver the remains to the rightful owner, and again, sincerely apologize for the delay. Thanks again to all for your assistance.
You look happy, but you look like you've been crying.
Yeah, it was. A lot of emotions today. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Joanne told us that the postmaster in Bensalem, knowing the importance of the delivery, drove the box to her house in his own car. Now, after we resolve an issue, we usually add a dollar amount to our tally, but in this case, the outcome was priceless.
Dating during the pandemic was no easy task with masks and Zooms and social distancing. But for a South Jersey teacher and single dad, it just might have been a lifesaver.
He says a date during the pandemic helped him discover a health scare he ignored for years. NBC 10's Sydney Long has his story.
Watch the ball. Attaboy.
It's not hard to see. Matt Jenkins loves being a dad and playing ball with 8-year-old Nick. But just 6 months ago, fear he wouldn't make it to this day.
Had I not addressed it at the time when she kind of helped me realize all this, I wouldn't be sitting with you right now.
Now going back several more years, Matt thought nothing of a bump he noticed after fainting and hitting his head.
I grew longer hair so I could disguise it because it was a physical, you could tell.
Even posting some of his new look photos online. When a brief stint at online dating during the pandemic wasn't cutting it.
Well, I met her at a restaurant seeing a friend who was playing guitar.
Matt met single mom and nurse Melanie Miller. He'd coached her kids years back.
And then it just kind of progressed from there. It was, we started texting each other. And
he says one night while the two watched a movie,
she had kind of glanced and rubbed the back of my head and said, Matt, what is on the back of your head? And I just responded with, oh, that's just a bump. Just a bump I have, no big deal.
The first thing I thought of was that he had a brain tumor.
Were you scared for him?
I was, yeah, of course. You need to go see a doctor, tomorrow.
And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, tomorrow you're getting an MRI.
The next day, they saw Dr. Alan Turds at Cooper Hospital. Within 48 hours, Matt heard these words.
That you have a hopefully operable, tennis ball-sized brain tumor.
Well, he almost passed out.
For me, that shook me to the core.
It was about to be Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Every minute of every day was about my son, my friends, my family, and life.
Matt was warned there were no guarantees with surgery. There were risks like an aneurysm, memory loss, even brain damage. He tells me he remembers packing a pair of Crocs for post-surgery because he wasn't certain he'd remember how to tie his shoes. During the pandemic, he had to go it alone. No visitors during surgery. That was January 12th. Luckily, the tumor was benign. He walked out of the hospital 4 days later.
How'd you feel when Daddy came home?
Happy.
Yeah.
The Matt and Mel romance didn't flourish, but it doesn't matter.
He texted me, he's like, I just want to see you for a minute. I just need to give you a hug. And he stopped over, he just gave me a big hug.
She's my saving grace. She really was the person in my life that helped me acknowledge and realize this before it was too late. Watch into your hands.
Now, nearly 5 months since his ordeal, Matt has a renewed sense of gratitude and a new appreciation for making health his top priority.
I'm a health and PE teacher. My goal and my mission is to teach kids about their own health, to be healthy, to be physically active. And then here I am, 2.5 years later, not doing it myself.
It does make me feel good to know that I was the pushing force in that.
It's an experience he plans to talk and perhaps write about.
The worst, most incredible experience of my life.
The high fives, hugs, and little moments with this love of his life
Want to help Daddy water the flowers?
are now more precious than ever before. Reporting from Winslow, I'm Sydney Long, NBC 10 News.
We reached out to several people in the street drifting community here in Philadelphia. They did not want to speak about this on camera or in public, but they did have plenty to say. They say this scene from back in October outside of City Hall was a street drifting battle between car communities from Philadelphia, New York City, and Baltimore.
Ocean City tourism officials say they're also planning to expand their advertising efforts beyond typical core media markets in Pennsylvania by targeting online ads to people in Ocean, Monmouth, and Mercer counties here in New Jersey.
So yeah, the cicadas, they've been chilling underground for the last 17 years, but when the soil hits 64 degrees, they're going to climb back out of the ground and go back up the trees.
For the last week and a half, NBC 10's Keith Jones has been bringing us stories about the sights and sounds of Tokyo.
Tonight, we're getting more of a taste of home. Keith Jones is live now with us. Keith, a mouth-watering story you have for us.
Yes, we're finally out of quarantine, right? We had so many choices as to where to go, right? We could hit the streets, we can go to a mall, we can go get some food, and that's just what we did, of course. And the story got more and more interesting every minute we were there. Where to first? The Sky Tree? An ancient religious temple? Found just the spot. Let's try it out. I picked Toyota cheesesteak, obviously. Hashimoto owns the place. This is great, the Phillies hat. I love it. Turns out he bought the hat on Broad Street.
10 years ago, 3 times been to Philadelphia,
where he worked inside a Japanese food truck. Did you go to Tony Luke's?
Tony Luke's, yes.
And that's who inspired him to open his own cheesesteak joint here in Tokyo, which inspired me to contact a friend back home, where it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I had a surprise up my sleeve. Tony.
Hey, what's up, Keith?
Tony, we got a surprise here. Hashimoto. Look who I have. Whoa. It's Tony Luke himself.
Hashimoto, how are you?
Good. Isn't that amazing?
This is great. I wish I was there having one of your cheesesteaks right now.
I watch your YouTube. Okay.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
I love it. God bless you.
ありがとうございます. Take care.
To make a cheesesteak, you need whiz or provolone, sliced ribeye, and bread. But it's love and a dose of Philly that makes the best ones stand out.
I did not think it would be this good. Tony Luke would be proud, for sure. Boy, oh boy, that was an unexpected story we were able to turn here in Tokyo. And I got to hand it to my friends, Tony Luke and Gino Vento. At 1 o'clock in the morning, your time, they answered my text and phone call to be able to talk to Hashimoto, too, which is just a huge thing. Just another example, too, of the way Philly has a huge impact all over the world. Guys?
Take a stroll down 2nd Street near South and listen closely for a sound that's almost alive.
And that's our official store motto. We aim to squeeze.
Accordions, floor to ceiling. Every brand for every band.
And it's something that we were doing that no one else was doing.
That is what makes Liberty Bellows a special place. It is one of the last full-service accordion shops in the U.S.
Most of the people doing it were getting older, and I said, well, you know, someone's got to kind of take over the new generation.
Mike Bulbaugh first picked one up when he was 17, an accordion he found in the attic of his Northeast Philly home.
Was really quite amazed with it. It was something I'd never even seen.
If you're wondering, the business is so big that this isn't even their first location. Liberty Bellows was on 9th Street for about 5 years until they needed enough space for roughly 1,000 accordions.
To buy.
This is a higher end model.
To play. And to fix.
We found a gecko in an accordion once.
Aficionados from around the world stop by this little shop to mend their broken bellows.
They might just need a few buttons popped out or a reed tune. That's something we see often.
This is really the only place to get your accordion fixed now.
Bobby Flaherty first played the piano. Then he was approached by the Avalon String Band.
It was actually a huge pain in the neck.
After 3 years of practice, he knows how to push the right buttons.
Most people think of the accordion, they think of Weird Al and Steve Urkel, and did I do that? But it's certainly a lot more than that. It's a fun instrument that you can play Irish music, rock music, classical music, anything you want.
in one instrument you have and melody on the right hand and accompaniment on the left.
It's a one-man band.
Yeah, one-man band.
Stas has been playing for a quarter of a century.
My grandpa loved accordion music. Basically, I didn't have much of a choice because like when I was like 4 and something, 4 and a half.
Today, his fingers fly across the keys.
On a bad day, I can just like sit at home by myself, pick an accordion, and play a couple tunes, and it makes me so happy instantly.
So does teaching the next generation, in person and on social media.
There was a craze on TikTok. And people wanted to learn sea shanties. That happened to be a spike in concertina sales.
Mike now sells about 1,000 accordions a year for every holiday and every event that needs a little squeeze to hit the right note.
I'm living the dream. I've wanted accordions, I loved accordions, and now I'm surrounded by them.
Matt DeLucia, NBC 10 News.
All right, take a look at this right here. A group in Delaware County says Jesus saved them. Now they are saving Jesus.
Only NBC 10's Tim Furlong has the story of local Catholics coming together to save a statue of Jesus and other statues from a parish that is closed.
So we said it's Operation Save Jesus.
It's a Delco miracle in the making.
I love it. Yes, absolutely.
Because I know that we have a good layaway plan. We're saving Cyril's.
Johnny had come to grips with the sad reality. St. Cyril's in Lansdowne, his former parish and grade school, had closed and was being gutted to turn it into a charter school. But last week, when he saw a statue of the Virgin Mary in 2 pieces in a construction debris pile, well, his Irish Catholic blood began to boil.
We're Catholics. These things mean something to us.
That's the moment Operation Save Jesus was born.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
They're literally saving Jesus from the scrap heap. After putting the word out on social media, Johnny's brothers brought the muscle. The Galantino boys, parishioners for generations, brought a big truck from their masonry supply company, and they got Jesus out of there. He'd been at St. Cyril's since the mid-1940s. Right now, Jesus is still chilling in the back of the truck, but a former St. Cyril's teacher who is now at St. Bernadette's in Drexel Hill said Jesus can come have a new home at her parish. They are making a special new concrete base for him that should be ready next week.
All right, slowly bring it down. Down.
The team has gone back to St. Cyril's to save other symbols before contractors further de-Catholicize the property.
Touchdown, baby.
It looks like they found someone with a crane to help them get the crosses off the top of the church and rectory and to lift St. Cyril himself from his perch. They're now hoping another Catholic parish or organization will give St. Cyril a new home. This is an ongoing labor of Catholic school kid love.
Yo, Jimmy and Tease, good job up there, baby! All the sacraments, we went to school there, 1st through 8th, weddings, funerals.
St. Cyril's has given so much to so many, and it's hard to say goodbye. These folks just trying to preserve what they can.
It feels like you're saving part of our town's history, and it meant a lot to so many.
You know, Jesus saved us, so we're going to save him. And we realize it's a statue, but it means something to us, okay?
In Lansdowne, Tim Furlong, NBC 10 News.